The first military dog came through the emergency doors with blood running from his mouth. The second was carried on a riot shield. By the time the sixth K9 reached St. Catherine's Medical Center, the ambulance bay had gone silent except for short, controlled barks, the kind trained dogs used when pain overwhelmed discipline. 6 handlers followed the gurneys, all injured, all refusing treatment until the dogs were inside. Vehicle rollover outside Fort Grayson, a paramedic said. Kennel transport hit a concrete barrier. Base veterinary team is trapped behind the storm closure. They told us to bring the dogs here. Dr. Nolan Voss, director of emergency medicine, looked at the animals and then at the crowded human department. This is not an animal hospital. The paramedic held out a sealed emergency authorization. The base commander called ahead. I received no such call. It went through administration. Voss did not take the envelope. Across the department, Nurse Elise Rowan was finishing a dressing change when she heard one dog strike the side of a transport crate. 3 blows, a pause. One more. Her hands stopped. She knew that pattern. Not aggression, a trained distress signal. Elise secured the bandage, reassured her patient, and stepped into the corridor. She saw 6 military dogs positioned beneath the white lights. German Shepherds and Belgian Malinois, mud on their coats. Field wraps dark with blood. 1 oxygen mask held against a narrow muzzle. 1 dog motionless, except for the rapid flutter of his chest. The largest dog stood inside a bent steel crate. His name patch read Bram, dark sable coat, torn ear. Left hind leg held above the floor. He was not barking now. He was staring at every person who came near the latch. Voss noticed Elise looking. He had spent 2 years deciding that her quietness meant she lacked ambition. She did not challenge him in meetings. She did not laugh when he expected laughter. She corrected medication errors before they reached patients and left the evidence on the correct desk without attaching her name. Voss found that irritating. "You used to work with dogs, didn't you?" he asked. Elise looked at him. "A long time ago." "Perfect." He pointed toward the 6 animals with a smile meant for the residents gathered nearby. "You wanted more leadership responsibility. Congratulations. Keep them contained until someone from the base arrives." A resident gave a nervous laugh. Voss handed Elise the unopened authorization. "Try not to let them eat anyone." No one laughed. Elise opened the envelope. Inside was an emergency waiver allowing licensed medical personnel to stabilize working animals under remote veterinary direction. A secure number appeared beneath the signature. Elise looked at the clock, 1:52 a.m. "How long since the crash?" she asked. 38 minutes, the paramedic said. "Which dog lost consciousness?" The paramedic pointed. "Ranger. Twice." "Which one was trapped?" "Sable." "Which dog vomited?" "Kilo." "How do you know to ask that?" A resident said. Elise was already moving between the gurneys. "Because they are not 6 versions of the same emergency." She stopped beside Bram's crate. The dog lowered his head and gave a sound so deep it seemed to move through the floor. Voss folded his arms. "Do not open that." Elise crouched several feet away. Bram's eyes found hers. Amber, unblinking, not wild, terrified. A young army sergeant stood beside the crate, with blood drying across his forehead. His name tape read Mercer. "He won't let anyone near him," Mercer said. "He bit through the first restraint after the crash." "Did he bite a person?" "No." "Then he removed a restraint." Mercer stared at her. Elise placed her hands flat on her knees where Bram could see them. "Bram," she said. His ears shifted. She spoke a command quietly. "Home hand." The dog's front legs stopped trembling. Mercer's face changed. "Who taught you that?" Elise did not answer. She repeated the command. Home hand. Bram moved once inside the crate, then again. He pressed his nose between the bent bars and inhaled toward her. Elise did not reach. She waited. A full 10 seconds passed. Then, Bram lowered his head until his forehead rested against the steel. Elise placed 2 fingers against him through the gap. His eyes closed. A long, shaking breath left him. Mercer covered his mouth with one hand. He only does that with me. Not tonight, Elise said. She looked at his blood-soaked sleeve. You need treatment. I stay with him. You can stay where he can see you. Elise stood and handed the authorization to charge nurse Beth Carver. Call the secure number. Put the veterinarian on speaker. Clear bays 2 through 7. Human trauma remains in 1 and 8. Get portable oxygen, 6 surgical packs, warming equipment, ultrasound, and every weight-based medication chart the veterinarian sends. Beth moved without asking permission. Voss stepped in front of Elise. You are not taking 6 trauma bays for dogs. 3 of them may die within the hour. You do not know that. Elise looked toward Kilo, whose neck stretched with every breath. Yes, she said. I do. The secure line connected. A woman identified herself as Colonel Dana Sharp, Army Veterinary Corps. Beth explained the situation, then handed the phone to Elise. Elise Rowan, Sharp said. Is that you? Yes, Colonel. There was a pause filled with static. I thought you left medicine. I left the Army. That is not what I said. Elise's jaw tightened. Voss looked from the phone to her. Colonel Sharp continued. St. Catherine's. Nurse Rowan served 6 years as a veterinary trauma specialist with the 47th Working Dog Unit. She handled mass casualty stabilization under combat conditions. Follow her triage. I will supervise remotely. Voss's expression emptied. Elise checked the clock. 1:56. We have 56 minutes, she said. Move. The doors to bays 2 through 7 opened. Bram would not leave the crate for anyone else. Elise unlatched it herself. He came out on 3 legs, body low. When an orderly moved too quickly, Bram turned. Elise placed her open palm against his chest. Home hand. The dog stopped. His weight leaned into her arm. She felt the force of his heart. Too fast. She examined him where he stood. Fractured hind leg. Deep cut near the hip. Abdominal tension. Blood on his teeth from a bitten tongue, not lung injury. Bram is 4th, she said. Mercer looked offended. 4th? He is bleeding, but his airway is open and his pulse is holding. Kilo cannot breathe. Sable is bleeding internally. Ranger's heart rhythm is unstable. Mercer looked down at Bram. The dog looked only at Elise. All right, Mercer whispered. Kilo entered Bay 2 at 2:01. He was a lean Belgian Malinois with a black mask and a service harness labeled Explosive Detection. He stood with his elbows turned outward, chest working too hard, eyes wide. Elise listened to one side of his chest and then the other. Air trapped around the lung, she said. Colonel, confirm landmarks and dose. Sharp's voice became precise. Elise assigned a resident to monitor, Beth to medication, and a respiratory therapist to oxygen. She explained each movement before touching Kilo. The dog tried to rise. Elise put her forehead briefly against his. You do not have to work right now. His eyes held hers. You can let us carry it. Kilo lowered his head. The procedure took 4 minutes. When the pressure released, Kilo drew a deeper breath, and his oxygen reading climbed. The resident exhaled. Elise did not. She was already in Bay 3. Sable lay on her side beneath a gray blanket. A female German shepherd, smaller than Bram, with mud packed around one eye. Her gums were pale. Her abdomen had become firm. Ultrasound, Elise said. The young resident from the hallway rolled the machine beside her. His name was Dr. Aaron Pike. His earlier laugh had disappeared. I have never scanned a dog. Tonight you are scanning for fluid, not species. His hands shook. Elise adjusted the probe. Here. Watch the dark space. Pike found it, his face drained. That is blood? Yes. Colonel Sharp reviewed the image through the secure video feed. Likely splenic injury. Damage control only, pack and control. Full surgery when transport opens. This was battlefield medicine, inside a civilian emergency room. Stop what was killing the patient. Protect what could wait, buy time. Elise had lived by those rules and tried to forget them. Sable's handler stood outside the glass with a broken wrist held against his chest. She saved 8 people in Mosul, he said. Found the secondary device after the first blast. Elise heard him. So did everyone else. The words changed the way the room saw Sable. Not as equipment or a problem delivered to the wrong building, but as a life that had carried lives. Elise controlled the bleeding under Colonel Sharp's direction, while Pike assisted. Sable's pressure remained low, then steadied. At 2:15, Elise covered her with a warm blanket. Sable opened her eyes and licked the blood from Elise's wrist. 1, Beth whispered. Elise shook her head. Kilo was 1. Beth looked through the glass toward Bay 2, where Kilo was breathing, without the desperate lift of his shoulders. Then 2. Ranger's monitor alarm sounded. He had been sedated at the crash site because panic had made extraction impossible. Now his heart rate fell, rose, and fell again. Elise checked the field medication tag. Then checked the empty vial taped beside it. The numbers did not match. Colonel, the recorded concentration is different from the vial. Sharp asked for the label on camera. Elise held it up. 10-fold concentration, Sharp said. Could be a stocking error. Ranger's heart stumbled. Could be, Elise answered. We treat what is in front of us. Voss appeared with a hospital administrator. This has gone far enough. Legal counsel is coming. Elise prepared the reversal medication. Then counsel can watch. You are exceeding the waiver. Colonel Sharp's voice came sharply through the speaker. No, doctor. She is operating precisely within it. Voss ignored the phone. Elise? Step away from the animal. Ranger's monitor sounded again. She looked at Voss. Authority in that tone once made her body lock. She had followed an order to wait for evacuation, while a dog named Knox bled against her knees. The aircraft had been delayed for human priority. The order followed protocol. Knox died anyway. Elise had heard his handler calling his name long after the monitor stopped. She had carried that sound out of the army. For 11 years, she had told herself leaving was a practical decision. Civilian nursings offered regular walls, predictable equipment, and patients whose families could speak for them. The truth was simpler. Every injured working dog had become Knox beneath her hands. Every handler's face had become Daniel Mercer's. She could still function, still save people, still enter rooms everyone else feared. But she had built her new life one careful hallway away from the part of medicine that knew exactly where she was weakest. Inside her. Now Ranger's eyes rolled beneath half-closed lids. Elise turned back to him. No. She administered the reversal agent. For several seconds, nothing changed. Then Ranger's heart rate rose. His breathing strengthened. His eyes opened. They moved across the room and stopped on Elise. His tail struck the table once. The administrator lowered his clipboard. Voss said nothing. At 2:25, 3 dogs were stable. Bram began to bark. One sharp bark. A pause. Another. Mercer tried to rise from the chair outside Bay 5 and nearly collapsed. He is calling her, Mercer said. Elise crossed the corridor. Bram stood despite the fractured leg. Blood had spread beneath the temporary wrap near his hip. She entered and he pressed his head hard against her abdomen. I know, she said. Her fingers found swelling beneath the torn harness strap. The bleeding had increased. He had waited as long as he could. Bram climbed onto the low procedure table only after Elise placed her palm in front of him and said the command. Home hand. Mercer watched through the glass while a nurse cleaned the wound on his forehead. Where did you learn that? He asked again. Elise clipped fur around Bram's injury. The 47th. My father served with the 47th. Elise looked up. Name? Daniel Mercer. For 1 second, the emergency room disappeared K9s walls, brown dust. A younger Elise kneeling beside Knox, while Sergeant Daniel Mercer held the dog's head and promised him he was going home. Knox had not gone home. Elise looked at Cole Mercer through the glass. Knox was your father's dog. Mercer stopped breathing. You knew him. Yes. My father, said the medic stayed with Knox after everyone else left. Elise returned her attention to Bram. He should not have been alone. Mercer's eyes filled. He wasn't. Bram nudged Elise's wrist. The torn vessel lay beneath the cut near his hip. Repair required speed, not heroics. Beth assisted, Sharp confirmed, and Pike monitored. Halfway through, Elise found a jagged black fragment embedded beneath the edge of Bram's harness. Not glass, not road metal. Composite casing. She dropped it into a sterile cup. Pike looked at it. What is that? I do not know. Mercer stared through the glass. The crash report mentioned a flash before impact. Voss shifted near the doorway. Elise noticed. Bram's blood pressure dipped. The fragment could wait. Elise closed the vessel, controlled the bleeding, and stabilized the fracture. At 2:36, Bram's pulse strengthened. When she stepped back, he caught the cuff of her scrub top gently in his teeth. Not biting, holding. Elise touched the side of his face. I am not leaving. He released her. Mercy was 5th. She was the oldest, a sable shepherd with a deep shoulder wound. Her eyes followed every sound from the other bays. Her handler sat outside with 3 cracked ribs, refusing pain medication. She raised Bram, he said, not his mother. Just decided he was hers when he joined the team. Mercy's tail moved when Bram barked from the next bay. The wound looked dramatic, but had missed the chest. A piece of black composite was lodged near the shoulder joint. The same material removed from Bram. Elise placed both fragments together. This one carried 3 stamped characters. Pike read them aloud. VX9. Voss left the doorway. Elise looked after him. The hospital administrator noticed. Where is he going? No one answered. Mercy's procedure took 7 minutes. She remained awake under local anesthesia and light sedation, her nose resting against Elise's forearm. When the fragment came free, Mercy licked Elise's glove once. 5, Beth said. Elise checked the clock at 2:44. 8 minutes remained. Atlas was last because he had shown no obvious bleeding, fracture, or breathing difficulty. Now he was convulsing beneath warming blankets. His temperature had fallen despite external heat. Saliva gathered at the side of his mouth. His pupils were uneven. Elise checked his neck. A chemical smell clung to the fur beneath the collar. She removed it. The skin was wet and irritated. Coolant exposure, she said. Colonel Sharp went silent for half a beat. The transport kennel system uses Vexilon VX9 refrigerant. Everyone looked at the fragments. VX9, the administrator picked up the evidence cup. Elise stopped him. Gloves. He set it down. Atlas convulsed it again. The team moved him to decontamination. They flushed his coat, protected his airway, and administered the veterinarian-approved antidote and seizure medication. His body loosened. Then his breathing stopped. The room narrowed. Elise intubated him. Beth ventilated. Pike watched the clock and then stopped watching it. Atlas's throat had swollen from chemical exposure. Air could not pass around the tube properly. Colonel Sharp instructed Elise through an emergency airway release. At 250, the monitor slowed. At 251, Atlas drew one weak breath, then another. At 252, exactly 1 hour after the first crate entered St. Catherine's, all 6 dogs were alive. No one cheered. Kilo breathed beneath oxygen. Sable slept beneath warm blankets. Ranger watched the room with tired eyes. Bram lay facing Elise. Mercy rested with her muzzle pointed toward him. Atlas's chest rose and fell with mechanical assistance. Then gradually on its own. Beth leaned against the counter and began to cry. Pike sat on a stool, hands hanging between his knees. Mercer pressed his palm to the glass beside Bram. Elise stood in the center of the corridor. Only then did her hands shake. Colonel Sharp's voice softened over the speaker. "You did not lose one." Elise stared at Atlas. "Not yet. You always said that. Because alive is not the same as safe." The ambulance doors opened. Military investigators entered with the base commander and 2 veterinary officers. Behind them came hospital security. Dr. Voss was not with them. The investigators examined the fragments, the damaged harnesses, the medication vial, and Atlas's contaminated collar. A major from Army Criminal Investigation looked toward the empty director's office. "Where is Nolan Voss?" The administrator frowned. "Why?" The major held up a phone, displaying a contract photograph. "Because Dr. Voss is a paid medical advisor to Vexilon Systems." The silence was not shock, but recognition arriving too late. Vexilon had manufactured the kennel cooling units. Military inspectors had recently found leakage in several systems. Sergeant Daniel Mercer, Cole's father, had helped prepare a whistleblower report before his death from cancer 6 months earlier. Cole Mercer had been carrying the final evidence to Fort Grayson. The dogs were not cargo. They were witnesses. The damaged medication, refrigerant leak, and device fragments formed an attempt to destroy the transport and disguise the deaths as a storm accident. Voss had received the base commander's call. He had also received a call from Vexilon. Security found him in the parking garage trying to leave with a hospital laptop and the unopened copy of the transport report. He was arrested before sunrise. The investigation took 14 weeks. Vexilon executives were charged with conspiracy, fraud, evidence tampering, and attempted murder. Inspectors found that the company had hidden toxic leaks affecting dozens of working dog transport units. Dr. Voss claimed he had only delayed treatment because of liability. Audio from the emergency department recorded his joke. Pawn records showed he had contacted Vexilon after the dogs arrived. Hospital leadership removed him immediately. Elise did not attend his hearing. She was working when the verdict came. Storm damage kept Bram at St. Catherine's for 6 days. He refused to sleep unless Elise sat where he could see her. She charted beside his kennel at the end of every shift. Sometimes Mercer joined her, his forehead stitched, one arm in a sling. On the 3rd night, he brought a photograph. Daniel Mercer sat in desert fatigues beside a black German shepherd with intelligent amber eyes. Knox, a much younger Elise, knelt on the other side, hair tucked beneath a cap, one hand resting on the dog's chest. "I found this in my father's things," Cole said. Elise looked at the photograph for a long time. "I thought he blamed me. He blamed the order. I followed it. You stayed." Elise swallowed. It was not enough. Cole looked through the glass at Bram, asleep with his nose pressed near the gap closest to Elise's chair. "My father said the worst lie people tell medics is that saving everyone is the job." Elise said nothing. He said the job is making sure nobody disappears without being seen. Bram opened his eyes. Elise reached through the bars and rested her fingers against his forehead. For the first time in 11 years, she allowed herself to remember Knox without hearing only the moment his heart stopped. She remembered him stealing a glove, sleeping beneath a folding table, refusing food until Daniel pretended to eat from the bowl first. A life was more than its ending. She had known that for every patient except him. 11 weeks later, the 6 dogs returned to St. Catherine's walking. Kilo entered first, chest heeled, pulling his handler toward the department. Sable followed with a new patch sewn over her side. Ranger wore a bright red vest and moved carefully but proudly. Atlas had regained weight. Mercy's silver muzzle seemed whiter. Bram came last beside Cole Mercer. The staff gathered near the ambulance entrance. Beth had placed 6 paper paw prints above the doors. Pike held approved treats, looking nervous. Elise remained behind the group. She had asked them not to arrange a ceremony. They arranged one anyway. Bram saw her. He stopped. Cole unclipped the lead. The dog crossed the department at a limping run. Elise lowered herself just before he reached her. Bram struck her chest with enough force to push her backward. Then he buried his head beneath her chin and made a broken, breathless sound. Elise wrapped both arms around him. Mercy reached them next and leaned against Elise's shoulder, then Ranger, then Sable, Atlas, and Kilo. 6 dogs surrounded the nurse, who had believed that part of her ended in a desert tent. Elise cried into Bram's fur, not carefully, not quietly. Cole waited until the dogs settled. Then he handed her Daniel Mercer's old service tag. One side carried the emblem of the 47th, the other had been newly engraved. Hand, all, 6 came back. Elise closed her fingers around it. Hospital leadership offered her an award and a promotion. She accepted neither immediately. Instead, she asked for something practical. An emergency working animal protocol. A stocked treatment room near the ambulance bay. Training for civilian trauma staff. A direct line to military and police veterinarians. The program was approved. They named the room Home Hand, though Elise argued against putting her name anywhere near it. Months later, during a summer storm, an officer arrived carrying an injured search dog wrapped in a yellow blanket. Rain ran from his uniform. "We were told Hostless Hospital knows what to do," he said. Elise opened the treatment room door. Inside were K9 airway kits, medication charts, warming blankets, sealed instruments, and a photograph of 6 military dogs beneath the emergency entrance. Bram's amber eyes faced the camera. The officer looked at the plaque. "What does Home Hand mean?" Elise placed her open palm near the frightened dog and waited. "It means you do not force trust." The dog's nose moved toward her fingers. "You give it somewhere safe to land." He touched her hand. That evening, after the officer left with the stabilized dog, Elise found Cole and Bram waiting outside the staff entrance. Bram's leg had healed with a small hitch when tired. Cole still used a cane on long days. They walked together beneath the trees behind the hospital. No ceremony, no uniforms, no one watching. Bram moved between them, occasionally brushing Elise's leg as if confirming she was still there. At the end of the path stood a bench facing the river. Cole sat. Elise remained standing while Bram lowered himself beside her shoes. "I used to think Knox died because I was not good enough," she said. Cole looked toward the water. "My father used to think he died because he asked you to wait." Elise closed her eyes. The evening carried rain in the distance. "What changed?" Cole asked. She looked down at Bram. The dog had placed one paw over the toe of her shoe. "6 dogs came through the same door," I said, "and none of them asked who I used to be." Bram lifted his head. Elise crouched and put her hand against his face. He leaned into her with his full weight. "For years, She had remembered a dog she could not bring home. Now another dog stood beneath her hand, alive because she had finally stopped running from the person who had tried. Across the river, Thunder moved farther away. Cole rose and called Bram. The dog took 2 steps toward him, then turned back. Elise smiled through the last of her tears. "Home hand," she whispered. Bram crossed the small distance between them and stood with one shoulder against Cole and the other against Elise, not choosing, holding both. The 3 of them remained there as the evening opened around them, quiet and cool, until the hospital lights came on behind the trees, and the path home was bright enough to follow.